Anyone who's ever done anything worth doing has dreamed big, failed mightily, and mostly started from humble beginnings. This is a podcast about such people. The most fascinating podcast in the world is fascinating because of the stories of the human beings. Hello, everybody. Turbo, the most fascinating podcast in the world, has nothing to do with me. It has to do with the people that agree to come on the show. And today we have a very well-known corporate executive and chairman of Tractor Supply Company. He's says he's retired, but he's still a very busy guy and is the founder of the Scarlett Family Foundation, among other things. Welcome, Joe.
Well, it's good to be with you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being on today. As I mentioned before, I'm in the habit of asking people about their childhood and their earliest memories. And I just wondered what your earliest memories are of your childhood. Where did you grow up?
Well, I can think of two early memories. Was in a sandbox fighting with a kid named Bobby Summercamp, and he hit me in the nose with a shovel, and I have a little scar on my nose to show for it from then. But I hit him in the stomach with a rake, and that was one experience, and another one in the same area. We lived in a little town in New Jersey called East Orange, and we were on a street with apartment houses on both sides. And there were one side of the street were New York Yankees fans, and one side of the street were Brooklyn Dodger fans. And we didn't ever see any New York Giant fans, but I happened to grow up on the side of the street with the Brooklyn Dodger fans, so I became a very devoted Brooklyn Dodger fans for the next 10 years or so.
No kidding. Do you root for baseball now?
Not as much as I used to. I can tell you an interesting little side story. When my son was 6 years old, he and I went to a New York Mets ball game at Shea Stadium. And over the next 15 years, he and I went away every summer without mom and sis. And we went to another one or two major league ballparks. And by the time he was 22, we'd been to all 30 major league ballparks and have the ticket stubs to show for it. And it was a great bonding experience between myself and our son, and it was a great learning experience.
That sounds terrific. Where is he now?
He is here as both of our kids. They graduated from high school. They went off to college. They graduated from college, and they went off on their careers. And then through one coincidence and one intentional move, both kids are back here in town. They were gone roughly 15 years each, and now they're back in town, and each in their own business. No kidding.
And when you say back in town, I'm assuming you mean the Nashville area?
Yes, Nashville.
So when you think in terms of grade school, you mentioned school, and I failed kindergarten. Some people know that, but not everyone knows that. But my teachers told my parents that I was emotionally immature and that I exhibited antisocial behavior. And I tell people that all these years later, not much has changed. So what was your early school like?
Well, I went to grade school, and I went to junior high school and high school, and I was probably you would call a mediocre student. And my parents were a little worried that I might be falling off the rails. And so when I was finished my junior year in high school, they suggested strongly that I repeat that year and spend 2 years in a prep school, which I did. I went to a prep school called Newark Academy, which was in Newark, New Jersey at the time. And coincidentally, the Newark Academy was founded in 1774. And this coming weekend, they're celebrating their 250th anniversary in Livingston, New Jersey, which we're going through this weekend. But the 2 years I spent in prep school were like 2 years worth of college. I had excellent education, and one of the things I particularly remember is a teacher I had for history both years there. Her name is Blackie Parlin, and we studied modern European history and American history, and it was just a tremendous education. And believe it or not, Blackie Parlin is still alive today and still working for the school on a part-time basis.
How old would he be?
He would be wasn't too much older than me when he was teaching, so I would guess he'd be 7 years older than me, probably close to 90.
So you got out of prep school and did the 2 years in college.
You know.
Then what did you do?
Then I worked 6 months for a grocery store chain running the front end operations, and I worked 6 months as a bank teller. And then I went to work for a very growth-oriented discount store chain in New Jersey called Two Guys. They were originally called Two Guys from Harrison, but by the time I joined them, they just had joined the Two Guys. And the company was operating stores similar to what you might call a Walmart supercenter today. It was a fast-growing company, and I joined and worked my way up in store operations, running departments in stores, supervising certain departments. I did some traveling in my supervisory work. Had a very growth-oriented, positive career, and the company was growing very rapidly at the time. But after 13 years with the company, and I'm doing very well, the chairman came to me one Friday afternoon and he said, "Joe, I just fired that blankety blank who was running our HR department." And he said, "I want you to become my HR director on Monday morning." And it was a sort of an unusual experience. I went from being in line management, being able to really tell people what to do, to being in a staff role. And after I got my nose bloodied a couple of times, I realized that I've got to learn how to be a salesman more than just giving orders. And it helped me mature and grow up in a number of different respects, and became the path on which I left Tractor Supply. I left Two Guys a few years later. It's interesting. The senior management of the company was a bit underpowered at that time, and it was one fellow in senior management that we said, if he could ever take over running the company, this company's going to be on fire. And when he left, much to the surprise of many of us in middle management, we all said, well, that's the way it is. And the fellow who left, his name is Bernie Marcus. He founded Home Depot about 3 years later. So we were riding the right horse. He just got off the train.
Mm-hmm. Are you friendly with him?
I have been friends with him over the years. I have not seen him in the past decade or so. He's in his 90s now. He was a wonderful leader, and when he was running Home Depot, people would never leave Home Depot. They loved Home Depot when Bernie was running the company, and therefore, if anybody applied to come work for us from Home Depot during those years, you wondered why. So sometimes it was all the wrong reasons.
That's interesting. So from Two Guys, did you go to Tractor Supply directly from there, or was there an interim step?
I went directly from Two Guys to Tractor Supply. I came in as a vice president of HR, and they probably should have said HR and everything else that nobody else wants to do. I became a jack of all trades pretty quickly. Company was in Chicago at the time. The company had been founded in 1938, and we were in a 4-story walk-up in a less than desirable part of town. And our parent company had given us permission to relocate, which we did. In less than about 6 months' time, we had moved from Chicago to Nashville. And since nobody else wanted to take over running the relocation process, I did. We had the whole company moved in 6 months into Nashville, which we've been since 1979.
How big were you then, like revenue-wise? How big was the company?
We're about $100 million a year. fellow who hired me was a very nice guy, but he had some strategically he really didn't have a good plan for the company, and what plan he had was not working at all. It was creating more losses instead of more gains. So a year and a half after I joined the company, one of those dates you never forget, December 1st, 1980, the parent company came in and fired the fellow who hired me. And at that point, I was one of half a dozen vice presidents, and the company brought in a caretaker who's going to just come in and look after things while they put out a search to find a new CEO. And the fellow who came in as a caretaker, his name was Tom Hennessy. Tom was a solid businessman with no retail background, but he's run other businesses for the parent company. And so he took over running things, and my peers had been loyal to the fellow who hired me and hired all of them. And so they sort of steered clear of Tom Hennessy. And I figured, well, I understood retailing, he understood business, and so I helped him learn retailing. He helped me mature as a business leader, and we got along very well. And he decided after about 2 or 3 months that he really liked this business. So he went off to back to the parent company in Atlanta and convinced them that he should be the new CEO. And at that point, he came back to Nashville, and he called me into his office, but nobody else. And he said, "Joe, here's how we're going to run the company. I'm now the CEO, and I'm going to have reporting directly to me, store operations, merchandising, and real estate. And I'm creating a new position over here called Senior Vice President of something or other. I forget what he called it, but Senior Vice President." And he said, and all the other departments are going to report to him. And I'm thinking to myself, well, where are we going to find this dude? And he looks at me and he said, "Joe, that's you." That was the biggest surprise of my life. And I credit that back to the fact that I stuck with him and helped him when my peers were sort of standoffish and not particularly helpful. And it created a tremendous partnership and relationship that lasted for a long time. It lasted till he retired in about 93 or 94.
So that was from, did you say 1979 to 1994 or 1980?
Well, he took over in
Okay.
1981. So he and I worked together till about 93 or 90, sometime like that. We had a great relationship, and he promoted me from senior vice president to executive vice president to president to chairman, eventually over a period of quite a few years. Now, one of the interesting things that happened along the way is that a year after he took over running the company, and we worked together very closely, we went from losing a lot of money to breaking even the first year he was there to making money the second year, and have been ever since. But back in the early 80s, and the parent company came to see us in January of 1982, and they said, and this is pretty close to the same words, they said, "Boys, we love you, but you're for sale." So our company was for sale during 1982, and we worked on trying to sell ourselves. And the parent company hired a search business firm to try and find a purchaser for the company. And as things wound down toward the end of the year, we wound up working with 3 fellows from New York City who had a lot of money, and we partnered with them, and 5 of us bought the company at the end of 1982. The 5 of us, we begged, borrowed, and stole everything we could to create some equity, and we had some, but most of the money came from these 3 fellows in New York City. And we were beginning to make money at the time, and things were beginning to roll forward very nicely. These 3 guys from New York were also the fellows that financed and ran the Woodstock Rock Festival. So our board meetings, we'd spend 2 or 3 hours talking about the business, and then we'd listen to an hour or so worth of stories from Woodstock. And it was a great partnership. 4 or 5 years later, they got triple their money back, and we own the company outright. And I'm still friends with 2 of those fellows today.
Is it a secret who they are? Or? Okay.
You wouldn't
All
know
right.
their names. They're just rich guys from New
Got it.
York.
Um, so you're known for sort of being vocal about your management techniques and opinions on corporate management. What are some of your views that for people that don't know you and haven't read about you, like how is it that you and the people that you partnered with were able to be so successful over the years, in your view?
Well, I think I just advocate for practicing good solid management. It's I guess the most important decisions you ever make are the selection of the people you surround yourself with, and it starts with that. And you have to have the right people, as I say, the right people on the bus, and searching for and finding the right people is essential. And then as a leader, it's our job to coach and develop our people so that they can function and make decisions and do things. And I work very hard on coaching the people who work for me. I also work very hard on talking about our mission, talking about our values, and making sure that everybody on the bus knew exactly what we believed in, knew exactly what our value structure was, knew exactly how we felt about customers and employees, and, and so we're all working together. One of the things I preach is push decision making as far down the ladder as you can. When the people who work for you can make decisions, you don't have to make those decisions. And when they make the decision, they'll handle the obstacles better than I might. And they're closer to the work, so they likely know more about it. Uh, and so I work very hard to push decision making down the ladder. Uh, it may sound a little silly, but I can proudly say that I made very few decisions as a CEO. Uh, I pushed most of those decisions down the ladder, although we were very good at communicating with each other. Uh, I made certainly high-level strategic decisions with the input of my team and high-level personnel decisions with the input of my team. But for the most part, we worked on creating an environment where everybody was empowered to do what they're supposed to do. We also invested very heavily in the education and development of our leadership team. If
Sure.
I can run through an example for you, if you were on path to becoming a store manager, uh, you could only train in certain stores where the store manager has been certified to be a teacher, and then after a certain period of time, and the period of time would have to do a lot with your background, you then would be ready to be a store manager. But before you can actually take the helm, you have to come into Nashville and go through a 1 week class. And the class is all about the softer skills of business. It's about hiring and team building and interviewing and getting along in the community and building teamwork. And that those classes are taught primarily by senior executives. And so by the time you left at the end of the week, you'd met every senior executive. You'd been able to ask every question you could ever want to ask. And when you left there, you felt you were empowered to be the CEO of your store. And you could, I know the
Mm.
president, I know the CEO, I know everybody. It gives you a sense of confidence in what you can and can't do. Plus, we make sure that they understand what the
Mm-hmm.
guardrails are. And as a result, you find the Tractor Supply to this day has very low turnover at the store manager level. Very low turnover, personnel turnover throughout the organization.
It's also, it seems to me, somewhat unusual. In other words, if I'm a store manager and I am at least acquainted with the CEO, makes me feel important. It makes me feel like I belong and I
Yes,
matter.
yeah, it is. And you met the CEO, and when you see when you see Joe at the annual sales meeting, you say, "Hey, Joe, how are you today?" And we're all on a first name basis, and uh, we try to build camaraderie throughout the organization.
In your view, why don't more companies do that?
Beats me. We have a tremendous track record, and financially, the company's had improving sales and profits every year for the last, I guess, 40 some odd years. we have a good track record, and you would think more companies would follow that path. Although lots of companies do. We're not alone there.
So eventually, you decided that you were going to retire from Tractor Supply Company, and what was that like? Getting
Yes. Well, I was almost 65, and been at it for 30 years, and was having a good time. With my wonderful wife of 50 some odd years today wanted to do a lot of traveling, and I did too. And we things were building, things were growing, everything's headed the right direction. And I'm of the opinion that an awful lot of old guys hang around way past their when they should leave. And I wanted a lot of younger people wanted to get ahead in the company, many of whom I coached and developed. And I decided it was time to step aside and move on, which I did, and very, very happily so.
can you? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I,
Forgive me.
as I was part of all the leadership development work we did, it had us partnering with a local university. And as I was announced I was stepping down, they asked me to come in and run their senior leadership development program, which I did for several years. And that was sort of another career. And I worked with a lot of CEOs in the community here, and we worked on developing their senior leadership. Uh, and that provided another sort of part-time,
Which school was
temporary
it?
career for me.
Okay.
Belmont University.
Do you still maintain a connection with them at this point?
Uh, Not a working connection, but I'm friends with the president there and know a lot of people there. Yes.
And what was the impetus for your foundation? How did you decide to do that, and what was involved?
The it was just before I retired, and we realized that we had taken the company public, and we'd accumulated some amount of wealth, and we decided we can't take it with us. And so, what are we going to do with it? How are we going to put it to work? And we decided, my wife and I, she uh, had not had much of an education. She came from England, and she wished that she had had a good education, and wanted to, as she would say, want to help those who were falling through the cracks. And so we created a foundation to provide originally scholarships uh, for students in Middle Tennessee. Everything we do has to do with our home, which is we call Middle Tennessee. And we provide scholarships originally for business, and then we expanded the scholarships for STEM students. And along the way, we became very involved with charter schools. And the charter schools here in Nashville are doing an outstanding job. And we support most of the charter schools here, and we provide support for all sorts of uh, career counseling in the community. We're one of the largest foundations in town, and our daughter Tara is the president of that foundation. And she's become quite a respected authority on education
That's got to
in
be
Nashville.
gratifying.
Yeah, it's thrilling to see your kids be successful. That's you always hope when you're raising them, in spite of the fact that they're teenagers for a while, that sooner or later things will work out well. And for us, both of our children are
That's
doing
great.
spectacularly.
Do you are you still on the board of the foundation, or do you play a role?
Yes, I am what I
Okay.
call the ceremonial chairman. Our daughter's the CEO. She really runs it, but I convene the meetings and bang the gavel and whatnot, and pay for lunch.
How is it a secret, or is can you tell me how big it is, like the assets of the?
It's the assets are about 300 million.
And how much do you give away every year as a percentage of that? Or
We are on the 5% plan. The objective is to have this foundation go on into the future long after we're around. So we spend our 5% a year, as you have to, and the goal is that we'll earn 7 or 8 or 9%, and it'll continue to increase the size of the foundation, and it has been following that path over a long time,
That's
over
terrific.
15 years or so.
So what's on your, I mean, you've led a busy, productive life in many ways. What's on your agenda now moving forward as you consider the next 10, 15, 20 years?
Well, I've been retired for quite a while now. I retired in 2007, and I'm involved in a number of different things. I do some executive coaching, both of entrepreneurs and of some senior leaders. I write a column for the National Business Journal, which I've been doing now for almost 20 years. I'm forever working with different people, different coaches, helping people. I do some speeches. I do some classes. I did a class last week for the National Entrepreneur Center. I'm on the advisory board of 2 universities here in town, but David Lipscomb and the Cumberland. That keeps me busy. So last week I was with a group of seniors who were trying to figure out how to get started in their career path at like one of the universities, and spent time with students talking about first steps and how to get your foot in the door and what a resume should look like and all those kinds of things. So I wind up busy doing all sorts of things. I'm on the board of one of the nonprofits here in town called the Beacon Center. The Beacon Center is a state-based think tank focused on limited government, free markets, and individual liberty. And we've been influential over the years in eliminating what little income tax we had, and eliminating the death tax, and eliminating a lot of unnecessary licensing programs, and we've been a powerful force in trying to put in the voucher program for public schools. That's another. A lot of things keep me busy, and then most importantly, I do whatever Dorothy tells me to do.
What's the phrase? Happy wife, happy life. Is that the?
That's exactly correct.
So when you're teaching these executives, when you're doing coaching and these young entrepreneurs, like what are the overriding? I think you shared some of them, but what are the things people need to know that they don't really know when you're coaching them?
Well, there are things they should know, but they may not know, and they may not understand the importance of those kinds of things. Of course, the selection of people, as I mentioned before, is extremely important. Even basic things like how do you interview people in the selection process? And one of the things that I talk about a lot, and I think it was very helpful to me, is I never interview behind a desk. I take anybody I'm going to interview. I put them in the car, and I stop. If it's in the morning, I stop by McDonald's for coffee, and if they turn up their nose at McDonald's coffee, I know they're not going to fit in with our culture. But that only happened once. But we get to the store, and I can see how the candidate interacts with the manager and the salespeople and the cashier and the customers, and I've also found that in that environment, I ask way better questions than I do sitting behind a desk with a notepad. And just things like that I share with people all the time. I share a lot about team building, how you get teams to work together. And just one of the key things that it's hard for a lot of people to grasp, but you should never keep secrets from your people. We prided ourselves at Tractor Supply of saying we're a no secrets company. The more you know, the more you can help the boss get to where he wants to go. So there's no point in withholding information. I hear people sometimes say, "Well, he doesn't need to know." That's just stupid. The more people know, the more they can help you achieve the goals. talk about all sorts of topics of that nature.
It's fascinating. I heard a story probably about 10 years ago. It's a company in New Jersey, and they dig like 100-foot holes in the ground and do ground freezing and stuff like that. Like when they build skyscrapers, these guys are called in. And the CEO likes to go to this place in Yonkers called Rory Dolan's Pub, and it's an Irish pub built in an old firehouse. And he'll have a new initiate and sit down with them,
Right.
and there will be 3 or 4 people from the company in this new initiate, and they always have the new initiate order first. So if the new initiate orders like a Coke, everyone else will order a beer. And if the new initiate orders a beer, everyone else orders a Coke, because they just want to see how he'll react, kind of like your coffee story. But
Yeah, have a
they
lot
do
of
have a
fun.
lot of fun with it.
So,
But
yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead,
Yeah,
please.
another thing I did, when we're sharing stories, uh, when in about half of my work weeks in my 30 years with Tractor Supply, I left town on Monday. I took with me a regional vice president, usually responsible for 150 stores or something like that, and sometimes some other promising individual from anywhere in the business. Could be from technology or accounting or real estate or marketing, and we'd head out on the head out to meet up with a district manager, and we'd probably have dinner with the district manager, maybe the district manager's spouse that night, and then we'd go off and we'd be in stores all day, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And we talked to every team member, talked to every customer, talked to every truck driver. We'd be asking questions and listening and paying attention and trying to share information about where the company's going. Uh, and I know you might think, well, the folks are going to tell the CEO what they think he wants to hear. And that happens from time to time, but I'd always, people instantly they walk up to me and say, "Hello, Mr. Scarlett," and I'd say, "No,
Hmm.
my name is Joe." And we'd begin to talk a little bit. And I say, "What part of the store do you take care of?" And I said, "Okay, Pat, you take care of the pet. You take care of the pet area. Let's take a walk through the pet aisle." And I'd say, "Hey, Pat, how's this new dog food selling?" And you tell me, "Well, it's selling pretty well, but we got customers with big dogs, and this coming in 10-pound bags. We need it in 20 or 30 or 40-pound bags. We got big dogs, they big appetites." Wow, that's a great piece of information. And I'd pass that along, and maybe the next store we were in, I'd ask the same question, and that by the end of the trip, we could hear that same thing 10 times. So we'll just pass that back to the buyer when we get back. But we'd spend lots of time. We talk with everybody, and we listen to every issue, and you can quickly understand how well a store is run, and you can continually learning about the business. I'm a great believer that those closest to the work know the most about it, and the more time we spend with those closest to the work, the better the decisions we can make. Now, when we were learning things like that, it wasn't like we'd go back and say, "Okay, Joe said do this, we'll do this." It's not. We'd say, "Here's what we heard. Take the ball and run with it. You're in charge of this area. Do what makes sense." We had a big. We were very focused on testing things. If you have an idea about a new product, that's great. Well, we can buy it and put it in 20 stores or 50 stores or whatever. See how it goes. If it sells well, we put it in more stores. If it doesn't sell well, we mark it down and get rid of
But
it.
it sounds like your
One of
philosophy
the
of
expensive.
pushing decision making down as far as possible and listening to people, and thereby you're empowering them in multiple ways. Like when you're talking to the person that's in charge of the pet area, not only are you listening, but then you're taking advice or information and you're implementing, which has to make people feel good, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, it does. It's a very empowering kind of thing. And then we may, if somebody at the store level comes up with a great idea about a new product, uh, we may do something special for that person. Uh, Give them some recognition or a prize or something. We always try to celebrate successes.
Mm-hmm.
When we have successes, celebrate them. That's a
Mm-hmm.
part of the culture of the company. One of the things that we were got into really doing a lot of, and are still to this day, is are telling success stories. And we encourage our people to pass success stories around. And let's say, give an example here. Maybe uh, I'm the manager of the store, and Pat, you're the sales guy, and you're working outside with a customer trying to sell a riding lawnmower, and you finally wind up selling a $2,500 riding lawnmower, and you come in and say, "Hey, Joe, I sold a $2,500 riding lawnmower." And I say, "Well, how'd you do that, Pat?" And I drilled down a little bit. And maybe you've done some things there that we hadn't done before. Maybe you had some good ideas about how you sold it. And if you did, I'd write this down. I'd write a little note about what you've done, pass it on to my district manager, who certainly pats you on the back, so you're feeling like $1 million. And then if it was a good learning, he'd pass it around to his 15 stores so they could all learn about what Pat Serbo did selling a riding lawnmower that was better than what we'd done before. And then if it's really a
Well,
fabulous
I'm
story, we
feeling
pass it
good, and
around
I
the whole
didn't even
company.
sell the lawnmower.
Telling success stories is an important part of Tractor Supply's success, and it's just part of the culture throughout.
I love it. There's so much opportunity to bring people up, and I unfortunately I see a lot of negativity out there today, and just hearing a story like that is is great for me.
We always work to be very, very positive in everything we do. Uh, when we're on these road trips, sometimes there'd be things in the stores that weren't what you expected, and and we never left the store chewing anybody out ever. We always left the store on a high note, and if there are things that need to be changed, and we would talk to the district manager in between stores, but we'd never leave the store. We left the store so people felt, wow, the
Hmm.
bosses were here. It was a good day.
And in the way that you talk to them, you honor them, and you don't belittle them. And I imagine if there were things that need to be done different, it's talked about privately and in a respectful manner.
Yes, it certainly was. You never criticize people in public. You always do that in private, anything like that. But when you're patting people on the back, you can pat them on the back all day long in public and wherever you are. One of the things I frequently talk about is that recognition is the number one motivator. The more things you can do to sincerely recognize people for real performance, the more of that performance you're going to get. It's pretty simple. If somebody did a great job today, you pat them on the back, they feel good about it. The next day they're
Hmm.
going to come back and do some more. If you ignore good performance and just let it happen, you may get more of it, but you won't get it
Hmm.
with the same degree of enthusiasm. And if people come up with new ideas, better ways to do things, you pat them on the back, they feel good about it, and everybody sees that, and other people do the same thing. And I can tell you with a high degree of confidence that most of the ideas in the company about improving the operations, improving the business, or putting in new products, and all those improvements, most of them came from just listening to people doing the work. The people closest to the customer know the most about what the customer wants and can best help us put together the right services and products
Hmm.
that satisfy that customer.
So I'm in the habit of asking people, is there anything that you might like to ask me or talk about today that we haven't talked about already?
Sure. How did you get started in podcasting?
Well, Joe, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I felt like the stories that I heard on a lot of them were stories that a lot of my acquaintances and friends and clients uh, have to tell. And I think they're fascinating. And I think most people never get to tell their story. And I just wanted people to be able to tell their story. And in addition, I felt like there's a few great interviewers out there But a lot of them talk too much about themselves during the interview, and as a listener, that annoys me. So I'll probably never be famous, but I do feel like I give people the floor, and I try not to interrupt and allow them to tell their story in a way that's honors them and doesn't inhibit their delivery. I thought I could do better, I guess I'm saying, which sounds egotistical, but um,
I have listened to a number of your podcasts in the last month or two, and I can see you have a real passion for doing what you're doing, and you do a very good job
thank
drawing
you.
people out.
I'm flattered that you listened. Um, and I've read your column and I get the Nashville Business Journal, as I think I told you, and I've heard about you from some friends in common down there. And so I was really delighted that you would agree to come on. And the fact that you listened to a couple of my interviews is really encouraging for me. Do you have any feedback? Like, if you were me, what would you be focused on?
Um, no, I found it very interesting. Some of your subjects can sort of ramble on for a long time and not get to the point as easily as they should. But other than that, I enjoy listening to them. I get a whole. I've listened to about 5 or 6 of them now, and I got a whole bunch more in there that I plan to listen to. I go out and I
Mm-hmm.
walk for a couple of miles every day, and it gives me a good time to listen to either a whole
Mm-hmm.
podcast or half a podcast or 2/3 of a
Yeah, I have a
podcast.
number of people that give me feedback. They like to walk and listen or drive when they're on a long drive. They do. One of them owns a restaurant, and he's a loyal listener and a candid critic, I guess I would say. But I do have a couple of people in the long form that I'm not quite sure how to redirect sometimes. I want to do it respectfully and as elegantly as possible, and sometimes I just don't know how to do it when people get rambling. But there are some, like, I don't know if you listen to the Joe Armentano one. He's the propane dealer. Uh,
I've not listened to that, but I very much want to listen to that because
yep.
propane is an
And
important part of
he's,
tractor's
I
business.
think, the biggest independent east of the Mississippi. It's called Paraco Gas. But the whole thing is interesting from a business standpoint and from the standpoint of the family dynamics. Like, he ended up buying out his father's estate and then all of his brothers. And, unfortunately, there are some at the least some hurt feelings, I think, over the years. But he is very open about it. I thought it was excellent. And Nick D'Onofrio at IBM. I don't know if you listen to his.
Yes, I just finished.
Mm-hmm.
I heard the end of that this morning.
I'm just in
Yeah, he
awe
was
of
very
him,
interesting.
and just to be able to visit with him from time to time is huge joy in my life. Um, so while we're on that topic, like, if you were me, like, would you be thinking in terms of interviewing CEOs or former CEOs like yourself, or would you go more the entrepreneurial route, or what do you think is most interesting to people?
I don't know who your customer is, so it's hard to say exactly. But from my perspective, I like to listen to business people talk, particularly about business culture, about business strategies, um, and again, they could be entrepreneurs with 20 employees or those running IBM. I just like to listen to those stories, and you can always I have a learning agenda. One of the questions challenges I have for people that work for me is what's your learning agenda? And I figure everybody ought to have a pretty good learning agenda, and I do. I'm older than most folks, and I still have a learning agenda today, and I think everybody should. So I'm continually trying to
Well,
learn one way or another.
that was one of the things I
I
read
spent a lot of
about you, or that you wrote about, and one of the things that compelled me to contact you. Like, on my phone, if I have my phone here, I'll show you. Um, there's an image that's my screensaver. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see that by any chance?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure what it is,
So
but it looks like a
it it's a
big,
big
big
round ball, and
round
there's a
thing.
man pushing it. And my friend Rich, who you met, drew
Right.
that for me for my birthday card. That's Sisyphus pushing a rock up a hill. And so, like, all of my life is I need the rock. I want to learn more. I want challenges, both personal and business, because without it, I don't have purpose. And without purpose, I don't have a reason to live for me. That's how I feel about it. And I think there's a lack of purpose, unfortunately, in some people, and that inhibits their ability to enjoy their lives.
Interesting, if I can digress here for a moment, you showed your phone up there, and it reminds me of one of the things that I coach people on all the time. It said, on your phone, you have an opportunity to put a message in there, so when people call you, they get to hear something. And I think most of the people I know don't, they just let it go to this mechanical message that says, after a beep, leave it, something like, and I have for the last 30 years or so, I change the voicemail greeting on my phone once a month, every month, without fail. And I make
Mm.
it interesting. I'm selling myself. It's a sales tool. And I would challenge everybody anywhere in the professional field, just do it. It's your opportunity to show off what a sharp person you are, as opposed to just going to some, and sometimes you don't even know who you're talking to. And so you have to say, well, I think this is Joe Schmo, and if it is, please call me back. Uh, but
You
you call
know.
mine, you would get,
Yeah, sure.
yeah, you want to hear it?
This is
Yeah,
great.
so you said this. Let's see. Voice greeting, play. Hello, this is Joe Scarlett, and thanks for calling. It's now April, and April means it's National Frog Month, so go out and pet a frog. It's also National Lawn Care Month, so it's time to go to Tractor Supply and buy yourself a lawnmower. And now, leave me a message, make it a good one, I'll call you back just as
That's
soon as
great.
I can.
Yeah, I could hear it.
You
And
hear
you
that?
only got one more day, right, of April? What, one or two?
Yes, I'll be working
That's
tomorrow
great.
morning. I'll put a new
Are
one
you
on for
still
May.
a shareholder in
So
Tractor Supply?
I am. I am. Yes, I am a shareholder, and Tractor Supply has
Oh my
hit three new
gosh,
highs in the
that's
last
great.
3 days. So, all because I was going to be on the world's
Yeah,
greatest
there's
podcast.
definitely a correlation. Everyone says that.
So you could tell future podcasters that
Oh
if
boy, I
your
can get
stock
in
will go up
big
3 days
trouble for
prior to
that.
being on my show.
But that's funny. So there's another thing I say, and you no doubt have heard it, but I say the most important punctuation in the English language is the hyphen because it's between your date of birth and your date of death. What would you like people to know about Joe Scarlett
Right.
if they don't know anything about you?
Well, from a professional standpoint, I think I would like people to know, and I think most people who know me do know this. I'm always focused on doing the right thing. In my business career, I always focus on doing the right thing with our employees. We call them team members. We invest in them. We teach them. We develop them. We stand behind them. We empower them. Uh, just for example, in the stores, there's a big sign that hangs over the checkouts that says satisfaction guaranteed. But below that, in smaller font, are the words that say every team member has the authority to do whatever it takes. And you look up there and you
Mm.
say, wow, the company trusts me. And it's simply a matter we invest in our people. They can just take care of the customer. We don't care if we lose money, as long as we take care of the customer, because we preach about the lifetime value of the customer, not this transaction. So it's always about doing the right thing with our people, doing the right thing with our customers, doing the right thing with our business partners. We try to develop good relationships all along the way and have open communication. Uh, for example, our buyers who buy the products, they have to go out have to. They go out and spend time in the manufacturer's backyard. How do you manufacture this? How does it work together? How can we function effectively to deliver a better product? Always working with our business partners to help us collectively. Let them do a very good job. So I would like to be known as somebody who always tried to do the right thing, certainly in business, because that's what everybody can see, but that same is absolutely true in my personal life also.
Is there anything we're leaving out? Anything you might like to add other than what you mentioned before about me starting the podcast?
Um, I think it's been an interesting conversation, and it's nice to get to meet you. And
my pleasure. And when I'm
thank you for listening.
down your way in Nashville, I hope you don't mind. I'll see if you're available, and maybe we can have a cup of coffee or breakfast or lunch.
Please
Terrific.
do.
Thank you very much for your time. It's been delightful, and I really appreciate you going out of your way. Thank you. Bye, Joe.
Thanks.
If you enjoy the most fascinating podcast in the world, please follow on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, and follow on Apple Podcast.